Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying!
Yes, guys, and welcome back to the Cannon Podcast, main podcast. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you are all good. We've got no Alex, he's away, but I'm back with George. And we firstly kind of wanted to wish you all, well, we hope you all had a very Merry Christmas. And we're obviously approaching to the new year as well. And I think for me, and I'm speaking on behalf of you as well, George, we kind of want to thank you guys so much for the support that you've given us over the past year, the love, the interaction, the comments, everything. Without you, it's not possible. You know, like, we love talking about Arsenal, but if you guys aren't there interacting, supporting, and giving ideas, none of this is ever going to work. So we do really appreciate it, and we can hope to continue to deliver the content that you really love and enjoy. But definitely have a really good New Year as well, because we won't be doing the main pod. We'll be doing the main podcast in 2026. So yeah, hopefully you guys have a smashing time. But firstly, George, how are you? You're back?
I'm great, buddy. I am back. I am back from my roadie out in Nashville. I don't know if anybody has ever had a chance to do that. I love Nashville. Incredible place to go visit. I highly recommend. I was just telling Rohan, I have had a crazy lack of vacation in my life. I think it's almost 8 years since I've been on anything longer than like a weekend trip or a long weekend type of vibe. So this was amazing for me. So I had like the time of my life, and it was still a little bit short. I would have loved the 2-3 weeker, but we're saving that for the honeymoon. So we've got that going. But yeah, really quickly, I probably just want to echo what Rohan said. Guys, honestly, this has been an incredible ride for us. As a podcast, and just the things that we've been able to do in 2025. And I hope you know, as creators, we rely on a two-way street. None of this is fun if I'm just talking into a microphone, and you guys have just been unbelievable. The Discord has been growing day by day. The way that the conversation flows down there, the way the conversation flows on all of our videos, just a massive thank you to you. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all told somebody that you love them during this holidays, because I think that's really important. Absolutely. I always like that as a reminder. And we love you all. So thank you so much for your engagement. I hope you've all had a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. And let's get into the second bird mascot that we have faced in the better part of a week in Brighton.
I love that. Absolutely love that. But just before we get into Brighton, I kind of really want to echo the fact that this festive period isn't always like joyous and happy for everybody, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people out there, many, who don't like the festive period. It brings back trauma, brings back bad experiences, and it's just not really a fun time for them. So if you are one of them who is suffering and is not feeling good during this time, sending my love, prayers, just good vibes to you, because I think that's really important. It's not happy for everybody, and that's certainly worth acknowledging. But Brighton, mate, George, Brighton,
the Seagulls.
Years, right. Firstly, I'm going to take a bit of credit, because I have seen Arsenal at the Emirates play Brighton 4 times, and I've not seen us win one. I've not seen us win a game against Brighton. That's absolute nonsense. From Chris Hughton to Graham Potter to Hertzler last season, I've just never seen us beating them. So I've stayed at home, and for me, we probably put our best performance against Brighton at the Emirates since they've came up to the Premier League. That's how poor our run has been against them. It's 2 out of 5 wins under Arteta before Saturday against Brighton at home. But yeah, like, I know you're on the IR with Alex, but just why don't you give everybody, you know, some general thoughts and feelings on the back of that big victory, on the back of pressure that City were applying after their win at the City ground.
Yeah, we're going to have to maybe provide some context, and I'm going to provide the context that I was away, and so all of the last week I have not had the live reaction of our matches, and I've been able to watch it in terms of my own time on a rewatch without the anxiety of the live reaction. So in approaching the Brighton game, I was a lot calmer than I came back and saw the broader social media and people that I had been talking with. And, you know, the one thing that I did want to focus, because we'll get into kind of the anxiety of the match maybe a little bit later in the pod, but you know, the first thing is these next 5 games, starting from Everton, where we've got Everton, we've got Brighton, where we're going to face Villa, we've got, I believe, Bournemouth and Liverpool, right? These 5 games all represented games last season that we either drew or lost. So these next 5 games were going to be incredibly critical to Arsenal's journey this season in turning what was a large aggregate of losses or draws from last season. So I thought this was a very important segment of the season for us. And we already had kind of addressed some of our mid-block issues earlier in the season where we knocked off that demon. But really turning draws into wins was a major reason for why we were unsuccessful last year. And this period is important. So I think from a performance standpoint, I almost had the case of, because you look at the season in bookends, don't you? You say, here's 5 game blocks, here's an 8 game block. This 5 game block, I said, I actually don't really care about the performance. And if we get a great performance and the results, then happy days. But from a performance standpoint, we have started the last 2 games, I think, really improving our chance creation. If you are going to look at kind of the season and a graph of our chance creation, which I think took a stutter from the start of the season till about mid-October, then we decided to start creating with a lot more consistency right at the time we faced our mid-blocks, which was excellent. However, we've now entered a period in which the finishing and the clinical edge of our forwards in this last week or so, in the last 4 games, in which we've garnered something like 9 XG and only had 1 goal that is not a penalty in those games, certainly represents, in the short term, an issue with the finishing. However, if you start to blow up it, all of these stats really depend on where your start and where your end is, because overall, for me, this has just been a variance, a very frustrating variance, but a variance nonetheless in poor finishing that isn't a team issue of poor finishing. However, in the moment, we just haven't been able to finish our dinner. So when you enter Brighton, I think that a lot of these anxieties gets amplified when in the last couple of games, you've also had late goals conceded. So in terms of all of that context, there is the fear that if we don't finish our dinner, we may drop points. And we all know how important those 5 game sample is. And that's why I kind of led with it, because I think that's part of the anxiety for me. So to exit with 2 wins from Everton and Brighton, and I do think this Brighton match, which we'll get into the specifics, was actually a brilliant performance, Rohan. Like, I thought this was some of our best central progression that we have seen all season in terms of how variable it was, how often we found ourselves cutting through Brighton, a Brighton that, yes, played into our hands with playing front-footed and on the press, but that's not always a given. We've struggled with that before. So it's not a given just because a team comes at you that we're going to just garner these chances. We had to work for it. Yep. And our captain with his best performance of the season, which I think is an incredible positive. So whilst we definitely left goals on the pitch, I sat there and I thought, this is a team that's creating at will, something that we haven't had the pleasure of saying all season.
Yeah. I think you've spoken brilliantly, as always, my man. I just kind of wanted to start off with, your initial discussion about the fixtures and, like the next 4 Premier League fixtures, and this was before we'd played Everton. So you got Everton, Brighton, Villa and Bournemouth, and 22-23, we accumulated 6 out of 12, 23-24, 9 out of 12, and then last season, which is the one that you're referring to specifically, we only managed to accumulate 3. So it's kind of like the same as, again, you're alluding to it, when we played Newcastle, West Ham, Fulham, and Palace. It was another group of 4. You can go not just to the previous season, but to the seasons before that as well, in which our record against those teams in those exact fixtures at home or away were not good enough, and not good enough for a team that is looking to win the big one at the end of the season. And to come out of it so far, the first 2 games with 6 points, is a massive positive. And I think the chance creation point, me and Alex and Forder spoke about this post Crystal Palace, and where it's interesting of where a fan sits with it. It's like you either are fearful because we're not finishing our dinner, or you sit in the camp, which is where I think both me, you, Alex, and even Forder were sitting with, where we're creating a lot of really good moments and opportunities, law of averages. I'm not saying it's 9 expected goals we've scored 0 from. I'm not saying we should be scoring 9 and matching that, but we should at least have 4 or 5. Do you know what I mean? That's the camp I sit in with. And for me, it's a really big positive, because we're creating a lot of moments in which this team, it may not be the top echelon of top finishers that you see in Europe or even in the league, but they aren't the level that we're seeing in the past couple of games. So it's a big positive for me to see the level of creation that we were witnessing. And the Brighton game was very much that. We could have scored 4 or 5. And I think, we'll get into the specifics, but perhaps maybe we could touch on the anxiety actually, because I think it's a really interesting discussion where, I'm sitting there, we get that second goal from a set piece, and I'm thinking, okay, it's a nice, relaxing end. I'm going to enjoy this. And then they get the goal, and I'm thinking, oh, God, here we go again. It's another one of these games in which we have done more than enough to score more than the number of goals that we actually have scored. But because we haven't finished our chances and our moments, that has led us to have an anxious end to the game that's not anxious when you rewatch it because you notice that Arsenal are in control. But what I will say is variance and the chance and the randomness of football, that's something I do worry about if we don't finish our moves, because as good as we are defensively, and I think there's another interesting discussion of whether, Arsenal decide to sit in. I personally don't agree with that. I don't believe that this is a team that is looking to surrender possession and they're going to look to suffer and just accept that. They do want to push forward. They want to play high. And there's a really good example, which when Saka puts the ball across the face of goal, really good movement from Martinelli. But that's come from us looking to pressure a lot earlier and to try and squeeze. And it comes from Saliba winning the initial duel and then Rice then sending the ball to Saka and we're off. But I think ultimately when you do have a situation where it's a 1-goal margin, there's always going to be a level of apprehension because of what's at stake, because of what Manchester City did earlier in the day, because of what Manchester City are starting to do now as they're really ramping up the form and the pressure that they're putting us on. So it's like, I think for me, the team I'm not worried about in terms of finishing, because I think the finishing is going to improve. If we continue to create the level that we are doing, we are going to be fine in terms of scoring goals, and we're going to have bigger 1-goal margins. But when we leave a game with a 1-goal margin, forgetting about that context, there's always the chance of something happening in the box, and before you know it, you've conceded and you've dropped points, and you come out of the game thinking that wasn't deserved. But that's what can happen in football when you leave a game with a 1-goal margin. The Sunderland game's a really good example, which I spoke about this in the previous main podcast. All it takes is a little bit of luck, a bit of randomness, which is what football, it can happen in isolated games. It's a little bit of a worry that I do have, but not a large-scale worry, because I believe that if the team continues to create the level that they are doing, we're going to be able to score goals and that apprehension won't be there. But my question to you, I'll give you, George, about this is, do you think the team, towards the latter stages of games, are feeling that anxiety, that stress, because they subconsciously, perhaps they know that a poor action from them could lead to a big moment for the opposition? Or is it we've been here before, we know how to defend leads, we're okay with it. We're okay with a situation in which the game is on paper on a knife edge?
I think that this is a conversation that requires the nuance of your starting defense versus not. Quite simply. I mean, you had referenced a moment just before when you were talking there, how Saka had pushed forward a brilliant ball to Martinelli. Who's on the pitch at that moment? Who had come on the pitch prior to that moment? Gabriel. The box defending breathing that not just fans, but even our players have, the confidence that they have just with those two in the back, means that some of these mistakes that are a little bit of questionable box defending in other moments are no longer there. And the team has that ability to want to push up and the trust to push up that they inevitably, in my opinion, don't do without our first choice center backs. And I'm sorry, that's just normal. When you've got the best center back partnership in the world, your team isn't going to be as willing to press forward as when they're not there. So that's just a common human thing that I think this team is suffering with, that will naturally tweak itself when you have your first choice defense available. However, I think the one thing that I do sympathize with is I also can't ignore how a couple games even prior to when I left, we had a specific example of Declan Rice saying to press and Martin Odegaard saying to drop back. Yeah. And it was a moment, but you can't deny that there was confusion in that time. So this idea of whether we want to sit back or not, it's really nuanced, because Arsenal, with their first choice defense, is one of the best teams in the world at sitting back, soaking up pressure, and defending balls coming into their own box. This is completely true. Now, when you lose one of the best aerial defenders in Europe, you're going to significantly reduce that box defending threat. But the team is naturally going to want to do that because they've always done. It's been their instinct as far as how they like to soak up pressure and how they've been able to do it. And by the way, they are one of the best in the world at it. But with the caveat with your first choice defense. So I don't like how often our instinct is to go backwards, even though I get why. And I do think that we need to be maybe a bit more conscious of that moving forward when we don't have our first choice defense. And we need to be a bit more specific about using the Gyökeres, the Maduekes, the Martinellis, our big space eaters, to push opposition lines back with running power. We've recruited that, and we need to be a bit more intentional with our subs, with the type of game state that we invite. Now, I don't think all of this is fair because we've got injuries. We don't have people like Kai Havertz that are fit. We are just getting back Jesus, who isn't fully fit, but I think is nearly there now, but has taken the last couple of weeks for us to manage, right? So from a fitness perspective, we haven't been able to really ask those questions, and we'll probably ask those questions with your lineup starting going forward with Aston Villa, but we're finally in a position that we can maybe be a bit more intentional with our subs. But I do lean in the camp of when we don't have our first choice center defenders, and without that first choice partnership, I would like us to be more intentional with adding more transitional forwards to push opposition back as opposed to the team sitting in. That would be the change that I would like. And I would like it to be a tweak. I wouldn't like it to be always the case, but I would like us to lean a bit more into being aggressive with an aggressive attacking substitution when we don't have our first choice defense because we're already defensively flawed. So play to your strengths. Now, when you have your first choice defense, mate, like I don't mind it because you are talking about the best center back partnership in the world at defending those things. So I actually don't feel as insistent on it, even though I naturally am always somebody that wants to attack space. I always like that, but I can't fault the team who is one of the best in the world when they've got their first choice available there at doing it. So it's kind of a nuanced conversation. I think I've gone around in bouts there, but I do think if I was to pattern it, it would be more of a case of when we don't see our first choice defenders there, generally speaking, we've got so much change, which we did during Brighton. I'd like us to see a bit more of the Madueke Martinelli wing pair type, especially if you started with Gyökeres, you can't do him. But I would like to use Gyökeres. In theory, he's one of that group of transition forwards that can push an opposition line back with their running power. So start to employ that a bit more when the game is tight, when you're leading and you're seeing opposition gaining a bit of control to the end of matches and you don't have your first choice defense. Now, when you do have your first choice defense, I don't think you need to go as strong with all of the running power, but I still maintain the best form of defense in these games where you are better than your opposition is to push them back and push them back with your quality. So I'm okay with us sitting in a bit more if we've got our first choice defense, but still understanding that we could maybe be a bit more intentional with our substitutions in those moments.
I think that's really interesting. You know, a lot that you said there is the first with obviously Gabriel. And I mean, if we look at some of the goals that we have conceded in his absence, you think of Wolves, you think of Aston Villa, both goals. Yeah. And even Aston Villa, both goals, you know, Eze is going to get the large share of criticism. And I think that's fair with his involvement in the Matty Cash goal. But if you look at how it starts, it comes from a cross that's not dealt with initially in the middle of the box, and then that's where the eventual ball then falls to the path of Matty Cash. But there's not the conviction. There wasn't the conviction against Wolves, you know.
Even the goal against Brighton, mate. Like, I mean, I love him, but Declan Rice caught blindside with the run there. I mean, a right back should do. Now, I'm not going to kill him because he's been so brilliant, but it is poor box defending and letting your marker come across. He's not on his toes; he's on his heels, and it's okay. He's not a right back, but it is the case.
I mean, the Crystal Palace goal from the Kop comes from a set piece. It naturally comes from box defending, the lack of conviction there. So I think you know, when sometimes box defending is a little bit frowned upon, in which, you know, you look at the Michael Keanes, the Tarkowskis of the world, the Ben Mees in the past, in which, you know, these guys are renowned for being ruthless in the box. They head away everything. They're fantastic at it. But you saw how that lack of conviction has hurt us in many moments in the absence of Big Gabriel. And it's something that doesn't happen under his stewardship. I mean, obviously, people could perhaps respond and say, well, against Newcastle, Watermada, against Sunderland. But these are isolated examples, right? When you look at Gabriel's presence and the time which he's been here and the number of goals that we do concede from poor box defending, it's not a lot. It's not a lot. So I think that's a really important point. The other important point, and I want to talk about actually, and I've wrote about this a little bit on X about Madueke, and I could even look at someone like Eze as well. And you look at Martinelli, for example, in terms of substitutions that Mikel could make to kind of, as you're alluding to, maybe combat a game state and give us a little bit more control, give us a bit more threat and a different way of approaching these sorts of situations. So the Club Brugge game, I was looking at it really closely, Madueke, and he scores 2 goals, and that's what everybody's thinking about. 2 really good goals, a really good performance from Madueke. But I watched it closely, and off the ball, Madueke, it's not a case of a lack of desire and work rate, because he absolutely has that. He's a fantastic forward in the press. He's so quick to jump to markers. But what Mikel was getting really frustrated with Madueke was knowing when to go, but also when to be compact. And Madueke was so insistent on going and going and going, and the gaps that he was leaving open, where the distances were too big in which he needed to stay a little bit deeper, allowed the opposition to travel with the ball and then go. He was too insistent on going early, and that meant that they were able to play through that side, and he'd overload Ben White with the fullback and the winger. And those are some of the technical things that I saw that Mikel was not happy with Madueke. And then you go to someone like Eze as well, for example, where Eze against Crystal Palace in the Cup, thought he had some really good moments on the ball, but there were some moments off the ball in which that is something that you don't associate with someone playing on the left-hand side of midfield. And then obviously you look at Eze against Matty Cash as well. So I'm not here to try and slander them. I'm trying to give the reasons that Mikel, and the reasons I think he will continue to not put a Madueke or an Eze on when the game is at a 1-goal margin. That's the way I see it, because I don't think he trusts them right now to apply the methodology, the logic of when to go, when to be compact, what players to mark in specific situations. He trusts them to go forward and to offer the threat. And this is where criticism could be from Mikel, because what you're saying is someone like Madueke, that pace, that threat, that ability to threaten the last line, to stretch teams, to push teams back. I believe I'm most certain that Mikel knows Madueke can offer that. But I think the margins in Mikel's mind, with a 1-goal margin, if Madueke slips up here off the ball and doesn't apply the way that I need the team to defend when we are without the ball in that specific phase, if he's not switched on there, that could lead to a really bad ripple effect that could then lead to a big chance arising in the goal. I think that's perhaps a way in which Mikel thinks about it. Do I think that's the right way to think about it? I don't think it is always the case, because I think in that game against Brighton, I would have brought on a Madueke. Absolutely. But someone like Martinelli, for example, he will always
brilliant in his cameo.
But the thing is, he will always bring on a Martinelli because he trusts Martinelli to go forward and to provide the threat, to stretch the last line, but also defensively and the application, he has it. Like, I think Martinelli and Madueke, they both have the intensity, the work rate, the desire. But Martinelli has been with the team a lot longer. He knows the logic, the methodology, and knows how to apply it in different scenarios. And that's why I think he will trust him more in that game state when it's a 1-goal margin. If it's a game state in which we need a goal, he'll bring on an Eze, he'll bring on a Madueke and whatnot. But I think when it's a 1-goal margin and we're approaching the latter stages of a game, I don't think right now Mikel will select a Madueke or an Eze. That's the way I think he sees it. So
it's a difficult one, right, mate? Because, I mean, look, there's a pro and con to this, right? Yeah. So when you talk about the margins, about the defensive margins, let's call it, right? Those defensive margins, you could argue, are already sacrificed with a weak center-back partnership. So if you had, Nkapie with a Saliba, okay, you want to add a bit more defensive margin to it, but they're already going to be weak in the box defending when they're there, because you've already got a faulty partnership. It's like having a faulty switch there.
So you could kind of like supersede it with attacking margins, really, couldn't you? You could look.
Well,
at
exactly. I mean, the idea of having an Eze on the last line, I as a center back can't leave Eze in space. I can't. I'm going to think about it. I mean, the Martinelli header with Bukayo Saka breaking through with Lewis Dunk like that. The whole reason is because Martinelli drops into an area that's more of a center forward kind of area, and he finds space like that. Lewis Dunk is caught in a horrible position, but where's the rest of Brighton's backline? They're nowhere near Lewis Dunk.
Yeah.
And with that type of threat, you're going to have it, and you're going to have that second guessing. And I think that power of second guessing how far a line can step up is more impactful than maybe adding the defensive margins of squeezing from wide areas. Because even if you had a Saka, a Martinelli, or one of those better subs, even a Trossard, who know the margins, all they're closing are wide spaces, right? So they're going to stop the entry. The theory is, let me add defensive solidity out wide so I can stop the cross coming in, because the cross coming in is dangerous, because we don't have people that can deal with it effectively with a worse center-back partnership. I would argue you don't get the cross coming in as well if a fullback is thinking about having a Madueke on the last line at the halfway point. He can't stretch as far as that because he goes, oh God, I've got an Eze and I've got a Madueke that are behind me. I can't leave Lewis Dunk alone. With that. So it's almost like, but again, this is the pro and con to both, because you do something like that and maybe you do let a cross coming in from wide areas that you don't like. And that's where I believe Mikel can be maybe just a bit more intentional with the prowess of the forwards available. So for example, when you have a Brighton and you analyze their forwards, look at Ayari and look at some of their left wingers, right? If you're analyzing it, their threat comes from Yakube Minta primarily, and with Denny Welbeck coming on, right? These are guys that need to come inside. So for me, the threat is going to be in the half spaces. You need to have a Madueke outside because the threat isn't from a dangerous cross. It's from these guys coming in, combining, and having the shot, which is exactly what we see Minta do with a crazy save from David Raya. Yeah. But it's an inside wall pass that comes in, and that's where the threat is. So when I say about being intentional, I'm with you. I don't think it's always the case, but let's be just a bit more intentional with the type of forwards and pressure that we're going to be under. For example, an Aston Villa, in my opinion, when they're coming on to us, that threat of the outside with, why am I forgetting, blanking on his name, the left back?
Maatsen.
Yes, Maatsen. That's the danger for them. They've got a brilliant through ball with Yuri Tielemans, but really, it's not Donnell Malen on the inside that I'm worried about. It is that outside overload with the cross inside and maybe Ollie Watkins who likes to drift wide as an outlet. So that's where I'm like, okay, in that instance, let's get on a defensive winger to stop that overload because the threat's out wide. And that needs to be just a bit more intentional, in my opinion, with the type of opponent that we might have. And maybe instead of you pair that with a defensive winger plus a Kai, for example, or a striker or a Gyökeres that can push the line back, but you have a defensive winger. Whereas in the Brighton example, I would say let's have an attacking winger and maybe a more defensive Mikel Merino edition in central areas, because you want to find where the space is. And if the forwards of the opposition are greater in central areas, add your attacking threat out wide. And then vice versa, if the attacking threat of the opposition is out wide. And I just think that substitution intention can be tweaked. There's room for improvement, I think, with Mikel for that. But it's all with the caveat of we don't have our first choice defense there, so, right?
Yeah. I think it's really, because I wanted to get because I think a lot of people will completely be, asking these questions of why we're not seeing Madueke, why we're not seeing Eze. And I think they're really valid questions, because I think what it is like we need to not confuse the things in which I maintain it. I don't, even in that game against Brighton, irrespective of the subs of a lack of Madueke, a lack of an Eze, the Arsenal team that was out there for the last 20 or so minutes is not a team that is with the intention from the manager to sit in. But what you're doing in that 20 minutes could be different with different players that you put on the pitch. That's the whole thing with it. So I'm thinking, okay, we're not looking to sit in here, quite clear. So, someone like a Madueke is going to make a lot of sense here in the last 20 or so minutes. naturally. And I think also there's the frustration with like someone like Mikel Merino. You know, when you look at his involvement in the Minter chance, which Davray makes a brilliant save, and also for the goal, he's not covered himself in glory. So then people will ask the question of, well, you know, how come Mikel Merino is constantly being given this assurance of being this person who Mikel trusts when he's had moments out of possession which he hasn't been able to do the required role? But it's, I think, from Mikel's perspective, it's like Mikel Merino knows what to do, but Mikel Merino physically in certain moments is not able to match the idea and the knowledge that he has in that situation. He knows exactly...
the opposite with Madueke.
Exactly. He knows exactly what to do, in my opinion, because I think he's a very smart footballer, but he is not able to execute it because of certain limitations that he does have. When players are making really intricate, fast-flowing passes around him and he's in the pivot, Mikel Merino is going to struggle. But he knows what is happening in that scenario. He knows what to do. And I think Mikel can bank on that trust of a player who knows. Whereas someone like Eze, for example, against Matty Cash, the number of times he's left him on the blind side, I think... You know, Eze can do it, but Eze is not being completely switched on in that scenario. But I don't always agree with that logic. I think you can supersede the defensive margins with attacking margins there as well. So there's a lot of nuance there, obviously, though. Like, there's so much to dissect there. But ultimately, I don't think it's a team that is looking to sit in. I don't believe the manager wants them to sit in. But then I also think the manager could tweak the way that we approach these games in terms of the personnel that you have, because naturally someone like a Madueke, it's going to provoke different things and different advantages, different ways of being able to attack and how you can threaten the opposition when they're looking to chase a goal. But I think to kind of like move, we don't want to go too much on Brighton because we're obviously on match day, Aston Villa, but I think it would be unfair to not talk about two players that we wanted to discuss beforehand, Martin Odegaard and Bukayo Saka. So, yeah, I think Martin Odegaard, which you alluded to, you know, his best performance of the season, just, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think he deserves his own section because, again, I've been critical of him. I think justifiably so this season for being a little bit too safe and willing to slow our tempo down. And especially, I think a lot of people will point to the transition moments of Martin Odegaard, which I think has always been a fault. It's something that, you know, we've critiqued, but that's not been a big reason why I've critiqued Martin Odegaard this season. It's more been his choices in deeper areas have been more safe as well. And I thought this game, mate, he was the most vertical he's been all season. And it went beyond just dropping out of the block to be an option, because when he didn't hold on to it for more than 2 to 3 touches. He was using his touches to push the team forward. And that was something that I think he hasn't struck the balance of this season. And it's what contributed to kind of his best performance that also resulted, especially in the first half, of him going off to the left. Some of the first time early balls into space were brilliant to see. The freedom he showed to go across the pitch horizontally just as much as he does to drop out of the block is something that I think he thrived in. And of course, his intention in the final third with that shot was brilliant. I think he's been working on it. Like he has been bubbling with it. And I never really bought the idea that he would lose his power and his ability to do that post ankle injury. I think it was just a matter of him trusting his ankle, because look, I have had an ankle injury myself. And I tore the ligament off the bone of my ankle. And I remember when I was going through that recovery, I had recovered. But me trusting to put the power in my laces through the ball post recovery was something that took me, honestly, several whacks until I really received a proper whack to my ankle where I was like, oh, it's going to hold. And I don't have to think about it. And I kind of sympathized with that mentality with Martin. I think that he was struggling with something like that in a way. And, you know, that goal was so important for him mentally, because physically he was fine. He could have done it much earlier, but we do underplay the impact that has, the mental impact of an injury, much more so than even a physical. Like, you're physically fine, but how afraid are you to enter challenges? How afraid are you to really use the scope of your physical ability, knowing, you know, what happened in that moment? And, you know, it is something that I thought he was brilliant at, not just in terms of dropping out of the block. Like I said, some of the scoop balls, he added some variety to his final ball. There wasn't the hesitancy, but also there was a better or a greater willingness to go over the back line as well. He just did a lot of things that I think are well within his capability. And he thrived with it. He had, again, his best performance of the season. And that is only a good thing to have returned to the team, because you've now, the conversation in this game is not about the out of possession contribution that he makes. It is about the on the ball. And I'm sorry, for a player like Martin Odegaard, we should be talking about on the ball. I shouldn't dominate my praise to his contribution in the press. That, and in fact, that to me, when that conversation shifts to a majority of his game, we talk about out of possession, whilst it is brilliant, and it is among the best in the world. I sit there and I say, for a player that's probably been the most creative player in the Premier League outside of Bruno Fernandes since 22-23, that is an issue. No matter what we're talking about, we should be praising the on-the-ball possession, and he deserves massive credit for being a lot more intentional with his touches, a lot more focused on pushing the team forward, and a lot more willing not just to be an option. Like, this dropping out of the block thing is great, but it's also what you do afterwards. So, okay, great, you've been an option, but what are you going to do with that? And he was brilliant in this match. I don't know. I kind of went on a rant there, but I don't know what you felt like he changed, maybe, or did you see him as vertical as I saw him at all?
I've seen him this season try it to play these early balls over the top, but I think the execution has been off in a lot of the games recently. I actually felt against Everton he was really good. But I think against Brighton, it was certainly his best performance of the season. And I think the lateral movements, not just from Odegaard, but also Declan Rice as well, is something that we've added a lot more to our game this season that I didn't really necessarily see a lot of in previous campaigns. And I think Martin Zubimendi is a massive reason for that, because he's someone who can play on both sides of the pitch. And when you've got someone like Zubimendi, someone like Rice and Odegaard, Rice and Odegaard, there have been heavy debates on where they should play on the pitch. Should it be on the right or the left? The fact that we're having that discussion shows that both can do both sides, right? And Zubimendi is someone who can do both sides. So if you've got three players who can do both sides, then it's going to be a team, I felt, that is going to be a lot more fluid and a lot more free. And I've really liked that from Odegaard this season. I think you've always wanted to see him more on the left, and I think naturally the way that we're playing a lot more this season, that's facilitated that. And I think the point that you make about, for the benefit of Arsenal, Odegaard being in form and having these performances is huge for us. It's massive, because he is the captain, and I love the moment with Rice as well. Once he scored that, where Rice was like, he was pointing to him, was like, he's clearly been looking for that finish. He tried it against Aston Villa a couple of times, and it didn't come off straight at Emi Martinez. But let's hope for more. I think the final player to just quickly go on to before we go into the Villa, because I know this is match day, we want to talk about Villa. So just briefly, George, about Bukayo Saka. You wanted to talk about Starboy.
I'm going to keep it short. I can understand that a lot of our frustrations in our finishing come from a day that Bukayo Saka probably left a couple goals on the pitch.
Yeah.
I have a major problem with criticizing a player that continuously rises when Arsenal struggle. A player that objectively on the day may not have finished his dinner, but at will destroyed De Kuiper, and was a major reason on rewatch for being the most successful player to enter the box of any of our forwards. It was countless. Now, was the final action brilliant in moments? No. If we really want to get into his Premier League tally, Bukayo Saka is performing and providing the same level as the top players in the Premier League of expected assists, but he's only on 2 assists, whereas everyone's on 6 to 7. And I don't believe Bukayo Saka, by the way, we're talking about the boy who makes every right decision, is not making the right decision to do it. I really have a problem when you're talking about this player in particular, who makes every right decision, the guy that we say downloads software packages, who's able to operate anywhere on the pitch, who in my opinion has some of the highest football intelligence in this squad. It's just not coming off for him. There doesn't need to be major analysis there.
Yeah, I agree.
In the game, it just didn't come off for him. Yeah. But to criticize Bukayo Saka is something I'm not prepared to do. I think that he knows he can execute. I don't need to tell him that. This guy has incredible standards. And I felt a very visceral reaction to what I saw broad scale critique for, I thought, was our best progressor, our most influential forward on the day. Period. I was actually shocked that was the turn. And I think, we are getting used to the fact that we don't need to have Bukayo bail us out every time. And I think there was a frustration for one of the first times where some of our anxiety as fans went to, oh, well, Bukayo will solve it. And when Bukayo didn't solve it and didn't give us the 3-1 that we wanted, it turned into this critique. And I sat there and I'm thinking, hold on, let me just have a look at his game right now. Mate, he was responsible for nearly 70% of our attacks in terms of entering the box. And so, yes, he didn't finish. Yes, it was a poor day on the day. Bukayo isn't a poor finisher in his entire career. It was just on the day he had a poor moment, which can happen. But I'm not comfortable with criticizing a player who has for years put this club on his back, continues to do so, and continues to be one of our best players in attack. Like, just factually, he got an assist in the match in addition to basically being our most in-form attacker on the day. He just didn't finish, and I think that was just a broader anxiety point where the team wasn't finishing. So I don't think that Bukayo deserved any kind of criticism, and I get defensive of it because I don't think we do maybe a better job as maybe fans in defending Bukayo, broadly speaking. He's the last player that I would look at as far as saying that there needs to be more there. On the day, was his finishing good? No, it wasn't. It wasn't good enough. He left goals on the pitch. No more so than some other players. And no more so than the team, who, by the way, has created 9 XG and scored only 1 from penalties. So the team is in a moment of finishing laxity. Yeah. But to criticize our best player, our most consistent player, it was off-putting to me, to say the least.
I guess it depends on, it's like, how far does the criticism go, right? Like, I look at it on, if we look at the game, I'll be honest, it was so frustrating because I was thinking he should be scoring. He should have left with a couple of goals in that game. That was the frustration I had. But then when we're trying to draw a narrative out of it and, look large scale on Bukayo Saka as a player in terms of his finishing and, what he's offering to the team, yeah, I can't sit on board with that. Not at all. This is our best player. But it was just annoying, George, when I was watching it. I was thinking, oh man, the amount of times you'd rinse the fullback again and again and again. And I just felt, a couple of goals was certainly something that he should have been able to get. But on the other hand, also, we're looking at someone who was really wasteful, I would say. But equally, he puts on a plate for Martinelli. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's great movement from Martinelli, but the finish is awful, isn't it? It's like, that's where Saka, if he gets that assist there, I think perhaps the narrative of the game slightly does change as well. Because then it becomes 2 assists, isn't it? And I don't know. I do think that in terms of he left goals on the pitch. I think there was frustration from my perspective on that. But overall, I'm confident. We're going into this Aston Villa game, and that's where we're going to go next. I've got a really strong feeling that he's going to cash in on something big in this game.
I think the team is bubbling, and this is something that maybe we can go into as far as transitioning to Villa and what to expect on Villa, because for me...
Match day, Unai Emery, derby. Right, George, I'm sorry to put him, but I'm sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of this man, Unai Emery. He can't keep getting away with this. He cannot keep doing this. We've seen it too many times. Against Chelsea, I was thinking, right, Chelsea got that goal. They absolutely battered Villa in the first half. I'm thinking, okay, right, he's getting humbled here. The humbling doesn't come at Stamford Bridge, but it's got to come at the Emirates. It has to. This team must not let them leave North London and walk away to the West Midlands with anything. I will be so angry. I'm sick of it, George. Honestly, sorry, but I'm sick of this team. I'm sick of that manager. Yeah. Sorry.
It's so funny because I feel like Villa, and this is Emery. We've lived it. We've lived the proverbial XG cheating. And this man will, at some points in the season, always be asked are they a title challenger? Lose a couple games, and then by May, we see the table and they're well far off it. But I mean, they scare everybody every season because they've got good players and they are a very good team. And in fact, I think they're a guaranteed type of team to compete at the top of the table. I don't know about a Champions League place quite yet, although I think they're very good value for it. I really think that this year they'll get it. But you're looking at a team that I think has a lot of strong carriers, right? When you look at it, you're looking at Morgan Rogers, you're looking at Ollie Watkins, you're looking at, Jadon Sancho, even though physically not the best, but again, an inside carrier, Buendia. Yep. So you're looking at a team with a lot of central carrying prowess.
Yeah.
So to combat that, Mikel has kind of chosen the striking partnership of like the Jesus and Kai, in my opinion, because they commit bodies in the center of the pitch. So to add an extra person there, but also to stretch them in the center of the pitch is where the space is a little bit. Even though they have high-flying fullbacks, which I still think that there are spaces there. I mean, Matty Cash and Kamara are both suspended. So you're looking at that as a really important point because Villa do have a lot of prowess carrying, but the space that they create from the unselfish runs of Maatsen as well as Cash on the outside is what adds the space for their technical players on the inside to move and to maneuver and to really carry the ball through the center of the pitch, right? So they draw teams out in that way, right? And they create mini transitions centrally with unselfish runs on the outside. So this is a major problem for Villa because I think Kamara's critical to them having an anchor. I look at the Onana aspect, but Kamara has been their anchor for a while there. So he gives them the platform, right, for Yuri Tielemans to kind of just dictate and to dictate with freedom. And I think if you allow Villa to get going centrally and create passes centrally, you're in trouble.
Yeah, 100%.
So it is about us being able to combat that, create greater transitions. We actually might have a slight difference of opinion, potentially, but to do that, I think let's focus on creating space centrally. Let's not look at the Maduekes and those type of touchline wingers to create space outside as much. I would look at, and this is what I guess Mikel has bet on. We've had the Kai Havertz Jesus combo, which you can replicate with a Martinelli on the inside, I think. Big decision to make between Trossard and Martinelli for me on left wing as a starter. And a big decision to make on Gyökeres as well, as who's going to start in this type of game. But one thing that I will say, since I'll get off the fence, if you're going to go with a Jesus, who I think is going to help us be more secure centrally as an option who drops off as a false nine, then I would like a Martinelli paired with that versus a Trossard and Gyökeres combo, which can achieve similar things, but I think that the space coming on the inside is going to need a little bit more creativity because Trossard is very safe technically, but I think he's been in brilliant form. But I think I value a bit more the movement of Jesus across the entirety of the front line. Whereas Trossard provides a little bit of that on the left-hand side, but less so on the right. And to me, we're going to need somebody that's really moving, front to back in that way to create space for our stretcher in Martinelli to take it on the outside. But I do think the pairing is basically Trossard Gyökeres versus Martinelli Jesus for me. I agree. And I don't know if you stand differently to that.
Well, yeah, we could maybe do our teams right now, right? And then maybe we could look a little. I do want to talk about something that we did at Villa Park, and I think we'll do again. But before that, team-wise, by the way, I know we spoke about Gabriel, but I'm so glad that he did get that cameo because actually, I did feel that Gabriel was looking a little bit rusty in his cameo. There was one pass where he just needs to play it to Nkapie, he just balloons it out. Okay, get that out your system now immediately because we've got Villa now next. But that's a massive positive. So I'd go. I mean, quickly, do you think Timber and Calafiori make it?
I didn't see anything. I mean, we also just don't know about Calafiori because it was such a a weird reporting about what happened. I mean, I don't know if it's muscular. You've got rumors of diarrhea on the timeline.
I was kind of doing some analysis, not going to lie to you, because I thought, okay, is he actually bantering? So then I saw the video of him going to the touchline. He did look like he'd just hit himself, but I thought he needs to change his boxes or something. But
welcome to the Cannon Podcast, where we do poo analysis.
I'm sorry, Califury. I know if you. I'm sorry. I'm saying this because if it is the case, your stomach has probably been through the mill. But I hope you did. I hope you did. Shit yourself. So,
oh my god.
Yeah. But let's assume he's available, right? Let's just assume.
Both of them, right? Because I think Timber was properly load management, if I'm being really fair.
I think so.
I think it was, and we're going to see that. We really are. So I think Timber will be back, and we'll need it, because I think Timber's, the biggest thing for me is Villa down their left. Like, they use Watkins as an outlet to basically go over any kind of a press, no matter what.
Yep.
But Ollie Watkins has mastered the first time finish off the right-hand side.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. He's got it in his trademark.
I need security there, and I need Calafiori and Gabriel for me. The ball over the top with Miles there is something that I think I would question with that specific thing. But then on the left-hand side for Villa, the Matson powerhouse with whoever they choose to come on the inside, whether it's a Sancho, whether it's another Buendia type again, and a Morgan Rogers, of course, coming through on the inside. I just think that the Rogers carrying and the Matson outside is going to need somebody who's on it defensively and able to track runners and know when to go out and when to stay. So that will become very important. So that I would do the Timber, Saliba, Calafiori. Gabriel Calafiori. Look, if Calafiori is not fit, I still I don't know, actually. I actually don't know what I do if Calafiori's not fit, because I think we're forced into it.
Miles, right? So.
Yeah, I think so. But if Gabriel's not fit, I would have Calafiori as a center back.
I agree.
And Hincapié on the outside.
Yeah.
That I would do.
But what happens if it's so, we've got Gabriel, we've got Saliba, Timber available, but Calafiori is not available. Would you go Hincapié over Miles? Yeah. I think I would. This game.
Just for this game, I love Miles. I just don't think it's the game for him, because I don't want to give them. They're going to be without Cash, so it's not as much of an issue. Cash would have really made this an easy choice for me. However, I just don't want to give them any opportunity, on the inside. So actually, you know what? Live on the fly, Cash does change my insistence on it. I wouldn't be upset. I just think it kind of depends on our forward line. Yeah, only because it's the first time I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Let me just say, I want Martinelli to start. So I'll just put my cards on the table. I think it's a Martinelli Jesus thing.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, I don't mind a Miles at left back because of the early ball over the top into space. And without Cash, I think that outlet, look, he'll have to deal with Ollie Watkins, who I think is a handful no matter who's there. Even Hincapié, who's there, won't win every duel with Watkins if he gets isolated out on the right. But I think it's less of an issue with Cash, basically. And if you went with Trossard, you've got to put Hincapié there. I think that's the relationship I'd go with.
Yeah. But I mean, Streets won't forget Miles' performance at the Emirates against Villa last season. He had Morgan Rogers in all sorts of issues. I mean, he was playing on the right, to be fair, Morgan Rogers. He's better off the left. But yeah, no, so I would actually go with, so if we're assuming Calafiori and Timber are available, Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, Zubamendi, Odegaard, Rice, Jesus, Saka, Martinelli. That was my team.
Same. Yeah. And I think it's critical that we do that. And you know what? I actually think this entire point, if Villa, because they will, like, Villa is a good team. Like, we're not going to sit there and dominate for 90 minutes.
They are like, so we spoke about it on the main pod post Villa Parks. Like, they are, Emery loves his wing fielders. He loves the players who start out wide, but they naturally will come inside. That's what McGinn and Rogers were doing at Villa Park at will. I think Rogers will still play on the left, and I think there's a question of what they do on the right potentially, because
for sure,
with no Kamara, do they go? I mean, they might change Rogers as well, because they could go Onana, Tielemans in the pivot, and they could go Rogers more central, like nominally central. And
I think they'll do that.
Yeah, they could do that. They could have Sancho
inside on the left.
Yeah, and then they'd keep McGinn back on still on the right, maybe. I don't know. Because I've not watched a lot of Villa. I've not watched a lot of Villa games without the likes of Matty Cash and Kamara, so I don't know what they will do at right back.
I don't know how many times they've had that duo missing. So the thing is, they can replicate a lot of the work Kamara does to meet people outside when they commit bodies forward with Onana. He's got the legs to do that. But to me, who's the outlet on the right who can carry? They need two of those carriers, and I do think it. I think it's going to be the Rodgers if I had to predict in the 10, but cheating to the right a bit more with Sancho on the inside. And I think McGinn defensively, just for the defensive work there, to allow Rodgers to hang a bit and really carry, which I don't think is ideal for them. Happy days for us. That's kind of the impact of not having your first choice. But the one thing that I did want to say before going is Emery, and we know this well, I think they are a sneaky second half team. In all of their best performances that I've watched, and I haven't watched a ton of Villa, but even if you talk about the PSG performance, you talk about the Chelsea, mate, where did they come? It was all in the second half. Like, they do well in the second half. And ironically, Arsenal do well in second halves of football this season. Yeah. So I think it'll be good, but this is a long-winded way of saying this to me is where I want Mikel to be intentional, and I'll just come out and say it. I really want a Gyökeres kind of 65, 70-minute sub to push Villa back, because I expect the game to be Arsenal stronger of the two in the first half. We need to capitalize there, and I suspect 10 minutes after the 45, at around the 65th to the 60th minute, I just know this Villa team wake up, and it doesn't matter where they are. I want a way to push that back, because they're going to come onto you, and they're going to come strong, and we will need to suffer a bit. They have really strong carriers, some of the best in the league at it. So I expect a difficulty around the 60th to the 65th minute. So I hope we can be more intentional and respond with that Gyökeres pushback, because I think there'll be space. And by the way, I think Gyökeres could get a goal. Like, I think he could be
a really good weapon off the bench, to be honest. And
very good
as well. You've got the Maduekes, you've got Eze as well. There's a lot of power there.
And I would look at that, mate. Like, I would look at this as a game where I do think the start's super important. Let's get our goals. Let's let Martin run, and then slowly introduce the forwards. I mean, if you really are afraid, I would do a Marino-Madueke pairing. You know, maybe two people that don't know. But Gyökeres is somebody that I think has got the press down. If anything, the press down too much. Like, I think he can run less for the team, but he's got it down. So I don't think there's an issue with having him come in centrally. You know, Mikel Merino, I think, understands better, but Gyökeres isn't poor in the press for me this season. He's actually taken it quite well on board. I think there was a period at the beginning he didn't show his best work, but he's fine in the press. So I think if you do add him, you can add somebody who's maybe not great in the press, but good on the outside. And the only reason is because there's going to be space with Maatsen bombing down that side. So I would like to see that kind of intention with this. I'm going to be looking, and if Villa, hopefully we're 3-0 up and Villa are capitulating, but if Villa comes strong, which I suspect to be in the second half, I hope we respond with our transition forwards as subs. But yeah.
Just hope we slap them up in that first half. Just score predictions, George.
I'm going to go with a 3-1. I do think that Villa score. I unfortunately think they scare us and they match us. I think that we have a tied game state for a bit. But I do think that we have the legs. And especially, I'm hoping it's more of a consolation goal than it is a worrisome goal. But yeah, I think 3-1.
3-0, we're slapping them up. They have to. They have to do this. I'm sick and tired of this team, Aston Villa. We have to. We cannot. Do you know how upset and sad I got when Buendia scored that goal? It actually hurt my soul. It hurt my soul when he scored that goal. We must batter them. That is the challenge I send to the team. Arsenal players, you cannot leave that ground without slapping them up. I tweeted about Arsenal saying, right, you need to slap them up on Tuesday, and I've got the whole of Aston Villa's fan base in my comments on X. Steve from Birmingham and all these guys there. Think, all right, these guys need to shut up. They have to. We've got to batter them. And I think we will. I genuinely do think we will batter them. I'm so convinced that this is going to be like when we played Newcastle in 23-24 at home, we won like 4-1. I think we're going to batter them.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that we are owing a team a battering very soon. So I would love it to be them. But I think this team's bubbling. I truly do. I think that this finishing discourse, it will flip. And let's hope that it's
do not let us down, boys. Do not let us down. Let's go to questions. My man, you've got Discord up, and if you wanted priority access to questions and access to the Discord server and all sorts of other perks such as rewatches, scouted, ad-free pods, and just to support the community, you can do so by becoming a Patreon or YouTube member.
We have had quite the tactico-y pod. So I would like to ask a very simple question. This is from Example on the Discord. Thank you for your question. What is your Christmas choice of protein, Rohan? And what are your opinions on the other choices? So I think you've got a classic roast. I don't know if you turkey or ham.
I'm not a turkey guy. I'm not a turkey.
Turkey is interesting. But I think ham is an option. I think a lot of people in the U.S. do ham. Honey glazed ham.
Just give me chicken.
Chicken?
Just give me chicken.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, like a roast chicken?
Yeah. But actually, this Christmas, so in the G-Van household, we don't eat meat on Mondays and Thursdays. So Christmas coincided with Thursday. Oh, God's sake. Ooh. So there was no meat. So I had a lot of lentils. So that was the protein. That was the Christmas protein.
Bit of Califury in your house.
So I didn't have the plateful that I was seeing on the timeline with all the roasts and whatnot. So, I was a lentil guy this Christmas.
I am somebody that
shout out to the
vegetarians,
though. Vegetarians,
shout out. It could not be louder because could never be me. I am a meatitarian to the point where I need to watch it. I love... Pause. I think that the roast beef is going to be my protein of choice. Just a classic, really well done, medium rare. Must be medium rare. I'm sorry, none of you well done people that like to char your meats to the gray zone, make it all limp. It has to be medium rare. I'm a classic roast, but I also don't mind a really cheeky ham. I had it the other day, and it's like one of the first times I was like, oh, that's actually not bad. Because it has a bit more moisture than a turkey. I think a turkey you can really screw up very easily, you know?
It really
dry as toast, you know?
Man. You gotta like flood it with gravy to get anything out of it.
Exactly. So I don't trust people with turkey, but chicken, you can never go wrong, can't you, with a roast chicken?
I mean, you can't get wrong with it.
Example, thank you for your question. We'll also be going to ps.designs_ at the Discord. Hope you guys enjoyed your Christmas. Thank you, good sir. I hope you enjoyed your Christmas as well. Basically, classic, upcoming transfer window, mate. Arteta makes some comments in the presser that essentially opens himself to being alive to opportunities, let's call it. It's a version of that Arsenal will always be aware. What do you expect from Arsenal? And do we need anything? I know you've been like me, we've wanted a different option in the 6-8. I think a lot of people are coming back with injuries. It's a kind of interesting time. Do you think we need to go in the market? Is the Semenyo deal that Arsenal are the only top 6 club not seemingly convinced about going in for him now? Do you critique the club for that? Do you think that, we've spent, again, for me, you have the hindsight for these things, but you always are open to opportunities. And this could be a significant thing in the title race, mate. You look at the differences with this. City are in, and they're active in a big way, right? Liverpool will be active in a big way. Can Arsenal afford, even if they had a very big summer, but so did all these other clubs, except for maybe City, you could argue, who still spent quite a bit. But Liverpool spent the better part of £200 million, and they're still looking at adding additions because of the situation they're in.
Yeah.
Is it necessary for Arsenal to be in? the market for you?
I think so. Regarding Semenyo, I've always felt it might be difficult to do because of the squad space, the amount of players that we have across the front line. I think if we didn't have the sheer numbers that we do have right now, my feeling is we would go in for Semenyo in the January window. I think in the summer we're perhaps looking. There's going to be a lot of players with their futures uncertain across the forward line. You're looking at someone like a Jesus. You're looking at Kai Havertz, for example. As much as I love Kai Havertz, we've not seen him yet this season, and he's one of our big earners. There's uncertainty there. You've got the Martinelli and Trossard scenarios as well, which I'm sure will be repeated again. But I don't think anything of that level of uncertainty of their futures happens in January, which makes me think we're happy with the options that we have up front. And I'm not overly going to berate the club in their stance on Semenyo as much as I do like the player. The area that I've always worried about, and again, I'm contradicting myself perhaps because we do have a lot of players here in terms of in midfield. I do worry about a Declan Rice injury, George, and it was a worry I had in the summer. I felt that, throughout the entirety of the squad, if we use Saka and Madueke as an example, there's still a massive quality gap, right? But at least there is the intention there to show that we are looking to try and mitigate this injury as much as possible with a player who can allow us to maintain similar dynamics. I've not seen that with Declan Rice. I've seen that with other players that we've looked to try and ease the burden that's placed on certain players' shoulders and also with injuries. I don't think we can replace a Declan Rice injury with the current personnel that we have in the squad. Now, can we therefore go into the market? Do I think the club will be in the market? I think if there's an exceptional opportunity to do so, I think they'll explore it. But I have a feeling that we're not going to do anything. That's the feeling I get.
I have a very difficult position to this. Great question. I feel that we did brilliantly with Berta to stamp his effect on the club in the summer. I think breaking down some norms and doing some things that I wouldn't have expected Arsenal to do. So from my perspective with the Berta, everything seems open and a lot more open than it had been. Like if this was the previous regime, I would have said, hell no. I'm going to have another year in which I'm fuming, and my New Year's resolution will be the no forward in 2024 is going to reallocate. So I think everything's possible. I do question the possibility points quite a bit.
Yeah.
Mate, I think the frustrating part for me is that we talk about squad space, we talk about these things, and our rivals are not doing that.
Yeah.
And it has to change just as much as, I really hate the logic of one in, one out mentality. And also just doesn't make sense to me financially as well, if I'm being quite honest with you, because I look at it, if I'm in the summer and I'm going to say, we're going to invest a certain amount in the summer, and that will be in a forward area. Rohan, I'd be lying to you if I didn't think £65 million was around what we would spend both in the summer or January. It doesn't matter. That's the type of investment I would expect for any forward addition. Even if we then had to sell, I take the squad space point, and maybe it's about making room, but Liverpool aren't doing that. City aren't doing that. They haven't for years. And I have a problem with us constantly making things difficult for ourselves, where I don't want to be smart here, where I'm looking at it a bit more. And I don't even think it has to be Semenyo. I'm more upset with the mentality that I know Arsenal probably won't do anything, but a club that spent over £200 million and made mistakes on their transfer strategy in Liverpool are going to be in the market. And, I understand how difficult the winter market is. I understand how difficult it is to make those moves, but I don't know if we are still only a year off the year that we didn't recruit a forward. So I don't know if one summer makes me think, although it was brilliant and I have no criticisms of it.
Do you think that, so sorry to cut in, but do you think that a Semenyo deal to a Man City, for example, would shift your feelings on the title race?
I don't think that it means that I'm now saying City will win it, but I think it is probably the biggest thing City could do to get close to Arsenal. If you think about it, City are running more than they have all season in any season, by the way. Yeah. That's going to continue. But they've got a Rodri coming back into play. Okay, they're going to be running less because when he comes in the second half of the season, they're going to dominate the ball more. What then do City lack? A physical outlet backup to Haaland and Doku, who do suffer from injuries. You add a Semenyo, you have future-proofs Man City's ability to always have a physical outlet, which hasn't been the case. And when they've dropped points, it's not been because they can't take care of the ball. It's because they've dropped points because outside of Haaland, they don't have a physical outlet to bail them out in going long. So if I'm going to add a Semenyo and I'm going to future-proof that for every game, I'm sitting there, I'm saying, even if City play poorly, they have a very good chance about gaining points. And that's not something that I felt since last year and beforehand. Like, not even last season, I still think that they struggled with it. But that inevitability to just win is something that I don't even want to give them the momentum for. So I've said this before, I love Semenyo. Everybody knows how I speak about him on the pod here. I wouldn't even say he's my first choice dream left wing target, though. I think it's somebody that I really love. But it is almost worth the power of taking away Man City's most basic guarantee that they can and really clamping on momentum. To me, we haven't appreciated momentum in a title race. That's probably the one fault I've had of an Arsenal team in general. Understanding momentum in the final moments and in the final stretch. Some of that has been taken away from our control in injuries. Some of it has been, added into our control now with more squad depth, you could argue. However, I fundamentally believe that I would like us to be a killer. I would like us to be a club that sets the tone. And I think that these teams in Liverpool and Man City know that a shot in the arm in Christmas period is very important, whether that's a trophy, whether that's people like a Salah being able to do the type of form that he did from February to May, by the way. And I'm not confident we've got a forward that can do that consistently. I think we've got players that can rise to it and potentially do it. We've got the Havertz, by the way. That sample of him, the type of record he had was that level of output. But I'd be lying if I told you, Rohan, no, we have a forward capable from February to May of consistently contributing to be a top goal scorer in the league. I'd struggle in saying that. So why would I give a team that already has that another forward who outside the top six and everyone's in for? Like, for me, there is just a mentality issue to accept. I have a hard time accepting that, I think. And I don't even know if Semenyo's the guy, if that makes sense. It's more of a mentality that everybody is looking at this opportunity to change them. And we've got examples of it not making sense from a squad space sense for them as well. Yeah. I mean, you've got Doku. Why does Semenyo make sense? I'm telling you why they do it. Because they want to guarantee and cut the throat off of us, and they want to chase us. It's a move of signaling their intent to put pressure. And he would. He's one of the best physical outlets in the league. I think he changes them in an attacking sense, finally gives them dual threat and a guarantee that if one of their big players is injured, with Foden and Shirky coming into form, the only thing that they missed is the wild card of a Doku random injury, a Haaland random injury. And they basically, with Semenyo, guarantee that won't be an issue. And that scares me. I don't think it flips the title race. Certainly makes me within 5-10% of variance, and I don't like that. I liked the idea that Man City were far and away from Arsenal. I don't like the idea that they're going to make a move that objectively makes them have the firepower to overthrow our defensive superiority that they lack. So yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying I don't know if it has to be Semenyo, but I just hate that I think my club won't do it. And they won't do it for financial reasons that they're going to say is smart. But we look at these teams that understand being smart is a two-way street because they understand the margins and the momentum in a title race. And the way we've been going with injuries, mate, this season, it doesn't strike me confidence, even though we recruited depth. We haven't seen the benefit of it all season.
His hand's been forced really with some of the decisions, really, hasn't he, in terms of lineups due to the injuries that we've had.
Actually, can I ask you a quick question on that?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's say, look, I think the specifics about what type of deal are strange, but do you think if for example, if Arsenal don't do something and both clubs do something, and Liverpool and Man City, and Arsenal are the only club, and we talk a little bit about how, okay, well, there's a lot of stuff that we did in the summer, so therefore we can't do it. But our two main title rivals make moves. How can Arsenal combat that from a momentum perspective? Do you feel that it has to be in the market? Could it be through a trophy in the Carabao Cup?
Could be through a trophy, could be through... I mean, looking at the squad right now, I mean, you know, this... Well, again, we've not got any proof of it so far this season, but we are looking a lot healthier in terms of the squad and the availability. You know, we've got Kai Havertz to come back who, you know, there could be a chance he makes the Villa game. You know, if reports are to be believed. Then you're looking at Mascara, White... They're not long-term injuries. They'll be back soon. Gabriel's back now. You know, Timber was... Yeah, we've spoke about it in terms of his workload. I think that was the logic behind him not featuring in that Brighton game. And, you know, let's see what's happening with the Calafiori. Let's hope it is one in which he's just got Brown in his boxes. But... yeah, I think that's that could be a momentum push in terms of the availability of the players and the squad that we went into the season with thinking, okay, this is a lot of depth, a lot of quality to withstand the impact of what is going to happen in this fixture schedule. Or it could be for a trophy as well. We are still in the Carabao Cup, but there's a really good opportunity there to win that cup, you know. So I think there's different ways of doing it. I think for me though, George, it's like, I think you make really good points about Semenyo. I actually think, you know, like, it's not guaranteed because we don't know how he's going to fare at a big club, right? But as a player, he's quality, he's class, Semenyo, and he gives them a level of contingency without a Haaland, as you said, in terms of being a backboard and a focal. But I actually do think Semenyo's got serious potential as a centre forward.
Me too.
Yeah. So
he played it before.
Yeah. Although I've not seen him play it out and out at Bournemouth regularly, but I just look at how he is as a player. I just feel like, yeah, you could definitely get a tune out of him there up front in the middle. So yeah, I think I just won't be as harsh on the club because of the stance they did take in the summer and the number of deals and transactions that they did. But equally, I understand what you're saying. Like, if we look at Man City and Liverpool and Arsenal as a trio, and I do think we have to include the previous January window because Man City spent a ridiculous amount of money in that window.
They did.
If you take it from that window to now, both those clubs have spent more money than Arsenal. So as much as the number of deals that we did and the money that we spent, we're still not spending more than them. You know, so it's fair points, but I just don't think I'll be as harsh on the club personally. Because I know the squad plays. I think you, like I said, you make really good points, but I just feel like there is a big squad there. So yeah, a lot there, a lot to digest. I'll go to Twitter now. I'll take one question on Twitter, and then maybe you could wrap it up with a Discord one. And it's kind of going back to the injuries that you were talking about, and it's from Thomas at Thomas010906. Wow.
Good barcode.
Arteta is so focused on the margins, but our most impactful margin is keeping our players fit. Arteta hasn't solved this one yet. Why? I mean, we've spoken about injuries before, but I think, you know, it's a fair point, right, in terms of the margins and how I think injuries are the biggest thing as to whether we can go for this, you know, and, you know, like, I didn't expect Man City to be this close, personally. But I think I look at Arsenal right now. I think the club and I think the team deserves huge credit because if we beat Aston Villa, that takes us to 45 points of the first 19 games. You extrapolate that over a season, that's 90-point pace. Now, again, we can't just extrapolate, but that's giving you a bit of an idea of the level the team is operating at in terms of point pace over the entirety of the season. And we have got, on paper, some more favourable fixtures in the second half of the campaign. I think they've done a fantastic job, and I do believe though that we need better health, and I think we are approaching a period in which we are starting to get better health. But that is going to be the key for me in terms of, you know, if Man City, like I said, they're likely to get a Semenyo, that for me could be our margin. You know, the health of the squad and what we have.
Yeah, it's one of the cases where. It's tough because, mate, like I look at our fixtures, right? You've got Villa today, we've got Bournemouth, Liverpool, Portsmouth, Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, Inter, Manchester United between now and January 25th. Then from January 28th, you're looking at Kuwait, Leeds, Sunderland, Chelsea potentially in the leg 2, Brentford, Tottenham. And Chelsea to end it, and then Brighton, and we end up having kind of that international break in March. Okay? Yeah. Favorable on the second half. Mate, this next month is a very difficult bout.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit scared, I'm just thinking about it.
We're talking Bournemouth, Liverpool, okay, Portsmouth, but yeah, Chelsea, Forest, Inter, Manchester United, and that's a lot. I'm sorry.
It's the fact that they're all close together as well. These are games that are going to be coming thick and fast. I mean, Bournemouth, they're in some horrid form, to be fair. But that's a group of games in which, it's going to be...
It's going to be difficult. And again, that for me is when... so I look at it, if we can survive that and go into February relatively healthy, I'm confident that we'll have close games again. But we don't really have that bunch of incredibly difficult fixtures between now and maybe April. There's a slight thing in April where we do have some difficult fixtures. Not a ton, but 2 or 3 in a row. So that's the scheduling conflict. Not to steal space on the question that we already answered from last year, is probably why I'm leaning a bit more into the window aspect of momentum, because of the where the stress is. The stress is in January. Now, the thing that I will say is it would be a great time to freaking show that depth that we haven't seen,
right.
We've got people coming back, right? Yeah. So you can't discount that. And that's why I really think the Jan window is such a sticky hold situation, because we do have big players coming back. And it's very difficult to see where the effects of that will always be in March, but they won't help January unless you buy a solution that helps you immediately. Okay. But the point about coming back, you look at Kai Havertz, he'll take a couple weeks to get back to proper strength. You look at Gabriel, who we just said was a little rusty in mentality. All the people coming back, we have the recruits. Are they going to be the recruits we know off the jump? I think that's a lot to expect. And can this team basically squeak and eke out this next month of stress? And can it? I think that the team becomes a lot healthier, beyond February. And that's normal for every team, by the way. Injuries really do stockpile in the winter period because of the closeness of the matches. So you look as a team, every medical department, I think, will highlight December to February as the worry months of a season. So it's kind of they've got more data, but that's a part of it, right? The injury portion of Arsenal, it's a major factor as to why we haven't even seen the potential of this team. And I do want to end on, I think it's brilliant that we have been able to garner the type of points because the squad has been sticky. I think a good friend of ours, Sham, had done a brilliant job about outlining the back lines that Arsenal have fielded this season. Mate, it's been ridiculous. Yeah. The consistency of our backline has been all over the shop, and we've managed to kind of have a 45-point pace potentially if we beat Villa. So I think that's really important. So difficult one for me to answer. I don't know how we change it, but I do think naturally after February, just the fixtures ease up, and naturally you'll have players that have come back and recovered.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Really, really fair points. I think we'll leave it there. We've been going on for an hour and 20, and so enough got for you guys to hear us ramble on about this club that has us in a chokehold. But no, like I said, if you guys wanted to support us, if you wanted to become a Patreon or YouTube member and have access to all the perks that we've discussed, Discord server, ad-free pods, scouted, rewatches. There's lots of things happening in the Cannon podcast. So do get involved. And always good though to record with you, George. Thank you so much.
Thank you, good sir.
Nice one. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and all that. We're going to smash Villa. Unai Emery is not getting away with it. And last but not least, thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed. Electrifying. Inspiration.